Imagine standing here on this great cliff overlooking the St. Lawrence River 3.5 centuries ago. You are in Quebec, the fortified capital of New France. Founded as a humble trading post in 1608, by the 1680s this was the nervous, beating heart of a continent-spanning empire, a precarious European society clinging to the edge of a vast wilderness. This is the story of a city carved from rock and ambition, a story we will reconstruct together using historical maps, architectural evidence, and archaeological findings to walk its cobbled streets and witness its fragile daily life to understand. Quebec. We must first understand its place in the world. The late 17th century was an era of global empires, and North America was the grand chessboard. France's colony of New France stretched in a great arc from the Gulf of St. Lawrence, down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Quebec was the linchpin, the administrative and military command center, from which this vast territory was governed. Its strategic genius was geographic. The name, Quebec, comes from an Algonquin word, Quebec, meaning where the river narrows. From these cliffs rising over 100 meters above the water, cannons could control all river traffic, making this site a natural fortress and the farthest point upstream that ocean-going ships could navigate. It was the gateway to a continent, and everyone knew it. Our visualization today is not an artist's fantasy. It is a scholarly reconstruction, painstakingly built from period engravings, like the detailed 1688 map by the king's geographer, Jean-Baptiste Franquelin. It is informed by the foundations of buildings uncovered by archaeologists in the lower town and by the countless everyday objects: clay pipes, Jesuit rings, knife blades, and pottery that whisper of the lives lived. Here, we combine this evidence with modern geospatial data of the terrain to rebuild, as accurately as possible, the physical reality of this colonial capital. Our purpose is not to animate a legend, but to illuminate a lost reality. Let us begin our arrival, as most did in the 1680s, from the river. Glide with me towards the shore. Before you is not a sprawling city, but a dense vertical settlement clambering up the face of Cape Diamond. The mighty St. Lawrence is bustling with small shallops and sailing vessels. This deep-water harbor is the colony's sole lifeline to France, carrying essential supplies of wine, textiles, and metal goods from Europe, and exporting its precious cargo of furs, lumber, and fish. The air is thick with the smells of saltwater, tar, and the damp wood of the docks. This is the economic engine of New France. Step ashore now into the lower town. The camera moves through crowded, muddy lanes. At the base of the cliff, this sector is home to the merchants, the sailors, the artisans, and the laborers. The buildings here are a jumble of wood and stone, built close together for shelter and commerce. We can hear the clamor of blacksmiths, the shouts of stevedores unloading ships, and the chatter of merchants haggling over bundles of beaver pelts. By 1700, 2/3 of the city's population crammed into this small area. It is a place of industry, noise, and pungent vitality. The commercial hub that fueled the ambitions of the elite living above our journey must ascend. Follow the steep, winding path Quai de la Montagne that connects the two worlds of Quebec. As we climb, feel the change. The upper town, protected by its cliffs, and by this time rudimentary wooden palisades, was the seat of religious and political power. The view from the top reveals a different order. We are standing near the site of the Chateau St. Louis, the governor's residence. It commanded a sweeping view of the river and the countryside. This physical elevation mirrored the social hierarchy. Here lived the colonial elite, the governor-general, the intendant, the bishop, and their retinues pan across the skyline of the upper town. It is dominated not by government palaces, but by soaring stone spires and robust institutional buildings. To the left, the Ursuline Convent, founded in 1639. To the right, the Jesuit College, established in 1635, and the Seminary of Quebec, founded in 1663. At the center, the Notre Dame de Quebec Cathedral. The church was not just a spiritual authority, it was a pillar of the state, responsible for education, healthcare, and ensuring the colony remained a devout Catholic society. The sheer scale of these structures, completed within a few decades of settlement, speaks to the immense resources and willpower France invested in establishing its permanence here let us move from institutions to the intimate spaces of daily life. Enter a typical habitation in the upper town. The homes of the more established colonists are solid, built of stone or heavy timber to withstand the brutal winters that defined life here. Inside, the furnishings are a mix of European imports and local adaptations. Archaeological finds tell us of their world. Imported French fiancé dishes, glassware, and personal items like rings and stained glass fragments speak of a desire to maintain old world civility. Yet the hearth is large, for heat was survival. The diet relied heavily on preserved foods from France, local game, and, for the fortunate, produce from riverfront farms. The first winter of 1608 to 1609 was catastrophic, killing 20 of the original 28 men. Every subsequent winter was a battle one, a testament to grim adaptation. Now, let us observe the human tapestry. In the public square or near the market, we see a society of stark contrasts. Officers in French uniforms, Jesuit priests in black robes, and wealthy merchants in fine woolens mingle with engages indentured servants in rough clothing, and skilled artisans like coopers and shipwrights. Notice, too, the essential presence of indigenous allies Huron, Algonquin, and others. The French policy was alliance, not displacement, and their cooperation was vital for the fur trade and military defense. Yet, this was a transient society. For many, historians estimate only about a third of the immigrants who came to New France during this period stayed permanently. Quebec was, for many, a temporary outpost for fortune or duty, not yet a true homeland. This precarious existence was underpinned by a constant, simmering tension. The turning point for the city was not a single battle, but a decades-long state of simmering conflict. The colony's alliance with northern indigenous nations placed it in direct opposition to the powerful Iroquois Confederacy to the south, triggering the so-called Beaver Wars. For the settlers behind Quebec's wooden walls, the threat of attack was a fact of life. In response, King Louis XIV dispatched regular army troops in 1665. The city became a garrison town, its rhythms punctuated by military drills and the ongoing construction of more formidable defenses. Like the Royal Battery built in 1691, the very geography that made Quebec a fortress also made it a target, and its people lived with the anxiety of being a European capital in a contested land. The consequences of this tension shaped the city's very fabric. The need for security accelerated its physical transformation. What began as a haphazard trading post was, by royal order, becoming a fortified, planned city. Engineers like Jean Borden worked to impose order on the urban layout. The wooden palisades would eventually be replaced by the great stone walls we associate with the city today. This militarization was a direct response to the existential threats from both indigenous nations and increasingly European rivals. The colony's success at expanding its web of influence deep into the continental, the way to the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, was what made its small capital so valuable and so vulnerable. Quebec's growth was a story of ambition, pressed against the hard realities of a contested world. As we conclude our visit, let us stand again on the cliff's edge and look out with dual vision, the placid tourist city of today. With its iconic Chateau Frontenac, standing where the Chateau St. Louis once did, belies the raw, urgent struggle of the 1680s. The quiet cobblestone streets of the modern lower town were once bustling, odorous, and vital arteries of commerce. The serene convents and seminaries were active hubs of evangelism and cultural control. The Great Plains of Abraham, now a peaceful park, were open fields west of the city, where history's decisive battle was still decades in the future. Quebec in the 1680s was a paradox, both powerful and fragile, a grand design on a daunting canvas. It was a European idea, slowly being shaped by the American reality. Our reconstruction fades, but the questions linger. What was it like to hear your first tongue in a crowd, to feel the deep cold of a winter you were not born to endure, to build a cathedral while watching the forest for movement? The stone foundations remain, and in their alignment, we trace the outline of a dream that would, against all odds, endure. What other lost chapters of our shared urban past would you wish to see reconstructed? The suggestions of our curious community guide our next journey through time.